I still remember the moment my plane touched down in Santiago, Chile's sprawling capital, hugged on all sides by the Andes. That first glimpse out of the airplane window was surreal, a city that looked almost like it was spilling out from the mountains, as if nature and urban life had made a quiet pact to coexist. The air was crisp, a kind of dry clarity that immediately felt different. Santiago is the kind of city that doesn't hit you with loud chaos the way some capitals do. Instead, it grows on you through layers. At first, it's the modern skyline, tall glass towers catching the sunlight, and then, as you walk deeper, the history begins to surface. Wide boulevards, colonial churches, small cafes tucked away on cobblestone streets. One of the first places I wandered was the Plaza de Armas, the city's beating heart. It's a square where you see everything Chilean life condensed into one frame: families resting in the shade of palm trees, street performers with guitars, painters selling their canvases, and the looming Catedral Metropolitana keeping watch. Standing there, I realized that Santiago isn't a city you rush through, it's a city you sit with. But what struck me most wasn't a building or a monument, it was the rhythm of daily life. The morning bustle of locals grabbing empanadas and coffee, the way students hung out in parks with guitars, or how the metro stations filled with murals and art. Santiago is alive in its details, and then there are the hills. Two of them dominate the city, Cerro San Cristobal and Cerro Santa Lucia. I climbed San Cristobal one afternoon, and the view of the Andes circling the city was something I'll never forget. Imagine a bustling modern metropolis, and behind it, these snow-capped guardians stretching endlessly. It feels like Chile is constantly reminding you of its geography, pulling you back to nature even when you're in its busiest city. Walking through Santiago, I also noticed the layers of Chile's past, sometimes painful, sometimes proud. Murals on the walls speak of political struggle, memory, and resilience. Chile is not just landscapes and wine and adventure, it's a country with a deep history that people carry into their present. And speaking of wine, one cannot talk about Santiago without mentioning the vineyards. Just a short drive away, the Maipo Valley sprawls with rows of grapevines. I didn't have a full vineyard tour, but even glimpsing those fields from the roadside felt cinematic. Chile is one of the world's top wine producers, and it's not hard to see why the earth, the sun, and the mountains create this perfect balance. But maybe my favorite Santiago memory was not a landmark at all, it was sitting at a local cafe in Bella Vista, a neighborhood buzzing with creativity. The tables spilled onto the sidewalks, musicians strolled by, and everywhere you looked there was art, from bold graffiti to quirky sculptures. Bella Vista felt like Santiago's heartbeat after dark: conversations, laughter, a little chaos, a lot of color. First impressions? Chile doesn't just introduce itself, it hints. Santiago felt like a doorway, a place that says, you've just arrived, but the real story is waiting once you step outside these mountains. If Santiago felt like a doorway, the Atacama Desert felt like stepping onto another planet. No exaggeration, this is the driest desert in the world, and when you're standing in the middle of it, the silence is so profound that you almost hear your own heartbeat. It's not an empty silence though, it's the kind that makes you feel small and alive at the same time. Flying into Calama and then driving towards San Pedro de Atacama, I couldn't stop staring out of the window. The landscape changed from rocky hills to vast, endless plains where the colors kept shifting: rusty reds, golden browns, and at times, strange shades of purple. The Andes lingered on the horizon like a mirage. And I thought to myself, so this is what Mars might look like. San Pedro itself is a small, dusty town, but it's full of energy. Backpackers, explorers, and travelers from every corner of the world gather here, all chasing the same thing: the magic of the desert. The streets are lined with adobe houses, little cafes, and tour operators promising to take you to valleys, geysers, and salt flats. There's a kind of frontier town charm here, a place where adventure begins every morning. One of my first stops was the Valle de la Luna, the Valley of the Moon. And the name makes sense. You walk across jagged ridges and sand dunes shaped by centuries of wind, and the ground beneath your feet crunches like glass. When the sun hits the rocks just before sunset, the entire valley glows orange and pink, and for a moment you forget you're on Earth. I sat on a ridge, watching the colors melt into one another, and thought, sometimes nature doesn't need to be lush to be beautiful, sometimes it just needs to be raw. Another unforgettable spot was the El Techo geysers. To catch them at their best, you have to wake up at 4 a.m. and drive up into the mountains in freezing cold. But when the first rays of sunlight break and steam begins shooting into the air, the entire field looks alive. The ground hisses, water bubbles, and the air smells faintly of sulfur. It's the kind of scene that makes you understand why the Earth is called a living planet. Then there's Laguna Chaxa, part of the salt flats, where flamingos wade gracefully through shallow waters. Seeing these pink birds against the backdrop of salt and volcanoes felt almost unreal. They moved slowly, their reflections shimmering in the water, as if time itself had slowed down, and the stars, oh, the stars. Atacama is one of the best places in the world for stargazing. One night, I joined a small group just outside San Pedro where telescopes were set up. But honestly, you didn't even need them. The Milky Way stretched across the entire sky. Brighter than I had ever seen. Shooting stars zipped by every few minutes, and constellations that were just faint dots back home appeared sharp and vivid. Standing there under that endless sky, you suddenly understand why humans have always looked upward for answers. The Atacama Desert isn't just a landscape, it's an experience in humility. Every dune, every salt flat, every geyser is a reminder of how old and powerful this planet really is. And yet, in the middle of this harsh, barren beauty, you feel connected, not just to the earth, but to yourself. Chile is a land of extremes, and Atacama is its opening act. A place where the silence speaks louder than any words you can say. After days in the desert, my next stop felt like a complete contrast: the Chilean coast, and especially the city of Valparaiso. If Atacama was silence and emptiness, Valparaiso was noise, color, and life bursting out of every corner. It's no wonder Pablo Neruda, Chile's most beloved poet, once called this city his muse. Arriving in Valparaiso, the first thing you notice is that the city is built on hills. Houses, apartments, and old buildings seem to tumble down the slopes toward the Pacific Ocean. It's chaotic and beautiful at the same time. Every wall is painted, every staircase tells a story, and every alleyway has a secret. Walking here feels less like sightseeing and more like being pulled into a giant open-air museum. The street art is legendary. Entire walls are covered with bold murals, some political, some playful, others simply breathtaking works of art. One moment you're staring at a giant cat painted across a building, the next you're looking at a mural of indigenous Mapuche symbols. It's art made not for galleries, but for everyone who passes by. As I walked through these streets, I felt like the city itself was talking, telling stories of struggle, freedom, humor, and hope. Valparaiso also has a quirky system of funiculars, these old cable cars that take you up and down the steep hills. Riding one is like stepping back in time. They creak, they rattle, but they save you from climbing endless staircases. At the top, you're rewarded with sweeping views of the port, the ocean stretching endlessly, and ships coming and going. It's the kind of view where you pause and think, this city has been welcoming travelers for centuries, and I'm just another dot in its long story. The port itself is alive with activity. Fishermen haul in their catch, sea lions laze around on the docks, and pelicans swoop down looking for scraps. I spent a while just sitting there, watching this dance between humans and nature, between work and play. There's something grounding about ports. They remind you of the cycles of daily life that keep a city alive. And then there's the food. Chile's coast is a paradise for seafood lovers, and Valparaiso delivers. One afternoon, I sat in a small family-run restaurant overlooking the sea and ordered a bowl of paella marina, a seafood soup brimming with mussels, clams, shrimp, and fish. It was hearty, messy, and absolutely delicious. Pair that with a glass of Chilean white wine, and you understand why people linger at the table here for hours. But Valparaiso isn't just about color and food, it's about spirit. There's a bohemian vibe that runs through the city. Musicians busk on street corners, poets read aloud in cafes. And strangers strike up conversations that somehow don't feel strange. Neruda once wrote, "You can cut all the flowers, but you cannot keep spring from coming." Walking through Valparaiso, I felt that line alive. This city insists on life, even when it crumbles a little, even when its paint peels, even when its buildings sag. A short ride away is Vina del Mar, Valparaiso's polished neighbor. Where Valparaiso is raw and artistic, Vina is calm and beachy. Long sandy shores, palm trees, and a slower pace. It was refreshing to sit by the water, listen to the waves, and just let time pass. Together, the two cities balance each other, the wild heart and the calm soul of Chile's coast. Leaving Valparaiso, I realized how much Chile thrives in contrast. From desert silence to ocean bustle, from barren salt flats to walls exploding with color. And each place, in its own way, tells you something about Chilean resilience, about creating beauty, whether in sand or in paint. If northern Chile feels like Mars, then southern Chile, Patagonia, feels like the edge of the world. And in many ways, it is. Stretching across the country's southern tip, Patagonia is vast, untamed, and breathtakingly wild. It's a land where mountains pierce the sky, glaciers march slowly into turquoise lakes, and the wind itself feels like a living character in the story. My journey here began in Punta Arenas, one of the southernmost cities in the world. The air was sharp, the sky impossibly clear, and the horizon felt endless. From there, I made my way toward Torres del Paine National Park, which is probably one of the most famous symbols of Chilean Patagonia. Driving into the park, the landscape unfolded like a moving painting. Rolling golden pampas, dotted with guanacos, a relative of the llama, gave way to jagged granite towers that seemed to rise out of nowhere. The closer we got, the more unreal it felt. These weren't just mountains, they were monuments, ancient guardians standing watch over one of the last great wildernesses. One of the first hikes I attempted was toward the base of the Torres, the three iconic granite spires that give the park its name. The trail wound through forests, crossed streams, and finally opened up to a glacial lagoon where the towers rose dramatically into the sky. Standing there, wind whipping across the water, I felt both humbled and exhilarated. Patagonia has a way of making you feel small, but in the best possible sense, like you're part of something far bigger. The glaciers here are another story altogether. Visiting Gray Glacier, I watched massive chunks of ice calve off into the lake with a thunderous roar. The ice, some of it centuries old, shone in shades of blue I didn't even know existed. It's a reminder that this landscape is alive, shifting and changing every single day. Wildlife in Patagonia is everywhere if you know where to look. Condors circle high above, riding the winds with effortless grace. Foxes dart across open fields. And if you're lucky, you might even spot a puma, the elusive king of these lands. I didn't see one, but just knowing they're out there adds to the sense of mystery. Then there's the weather, unpredictable, wild, and often unforgiving. In a single day, I experienced sunshine, rain, snow, and winds so strong they almost knocked me over. But that's Patagonia, a place where nature refuses to be tamed, and where part of the adventure is simply adapting. One of the most peaceful moments I had was at Lago Pijo, where the water mirrored the surrounding peaks like glass. I sat on the shore, the cold air biting but the silence comforting. It felt like the kind of place where you could sit for hours without needing to say a word. Patagonia isn't just about the dramatic though, it's about the details too. The crunch of your boots on gravel, the smell of lenga trees in the forest, the sight of wildflowers blooming against a backdrop of snow. It's a sensory experience as much as a visual one. What stayed with me most, though, was the feeling of vastness. Patagonia isn't crowded with tourists, it isn't filled with cities. It's space, wide open, endless space. And in a world that often feels too fast, too loud, Patagonia feels like a rare pause. When I finally left, I realized that Patagonia doesn't just give you memories, it leaves you with perspective. A reminder that the earth is wild, resilient, and far greater than we sometimes remember. After deserts, coasts, and glaciers, I realized something: Chile is not just about landscapes. It's about the people who live between them, the flavors that bring them together, and the small daily rituals that give the country its warmth. One of the best ways to meet Chile is through its markets. In Santiago, I wandered into the Mercado Central, a buzzing hall filled with the smell of the sea. Vendors called out cheerfully, showing off piles of mussels, crabs, and giant fish laid out on ice. Families shopped with baskets, cooks haggled over prices, and in the center, restaurants dished up steaming plates of fried fish and seafood stews. Markets in Chile aren't just about shopping, they're social spaces. Places where life unfolds in conversations, laughter, and shared meals. Food here feels like a story of the land itself. In the north, near Atacama, I tried pastel de choclo, a comforting dish made with corn, meat, and olives, baked until golden. On the coast, it was seafood everywhere: empanadas stuffed with shrimp, ceviche marinated in lime, and soups rich enough to chase away the sea breeze chill. Down south in Patagonia, I was welcomed with cordero al palo, a traditional roasted lamb cooked slowly over an open fire. Each region seems to add its own flavor, shaped by its climate and history, but beyond the dishes, it's the way Chileans approach food that struck me. Meals are not rushed. Even a simple coffee at a sidewalk cafe can stretch into a conversation that lingers. And then there's the asado, Chile's version of a barbecue. I was lucky enough to join one, and it was more than just grilling meat. It was music playing, kids running around, adults laughing, wine being poured generously, and everyone eating together. The asado isn't just food, it's community on a plate. Another surprise was Chile's love for mate, the herbal tea more often associated with Argentina. But in Chile, especially in the south, you'll see people carrying thermoses and sipping mate with friends. Sharing it is a ritual of connection, a circle that invites you in. What really stood out, though, were the people themselves. Everywhere I went, I was met with kindness. In Valparaiso, an artist explained the story behind a mural and then invited me for coffee. In San Pedro, a guide shared not just facts about the desert but childhood stories of growing up there. In Patagonia, a family running a small lodge treated me like I was one of their own, serving me food and telling stories late into the night. Chileans carry a quiet pride in their land, in their resilience, and in their culture. This is a country that has faced earthquakes, political upheavals, and natural extremes. And yet, what shines through is joy, in their songs, in their food, in the way they celebrate even small things. As my trip drew to an end, I found myself reflecting not just on the places I had seen but on the way they connected. The desert's silence, the ocean's color, the mountain's grandeur, the market's noise, together, they form a mosaic of Chile. A country that stretches thin and long across the map but holds within it almost every kind of world you can imagine. Chile taught me something important: that travel isn't just about collecting sights. It's about listening to people, to landscapes, to histories whispered through murals and sung in kitchens. And if you listen closely, Chile speaks in many voices, all saying the same thing: life is vast, and it is beautiful. When I think back now, what I carry with me is not just the image of flamingos in a salt flat, or glaciers glowing blue, or hills covered in murals. I carry the warmth of a shared meal, the echo of laughter, and the reminder that beauty is not just in nature, it's in people. Chile is not a place you simply visit. It's a place that stays with you.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe.